Hey, what is up guys? So we are going to be going over the best side deck options for January 2015, and I just want to mention first off, this will also cover some of the stuff that is getting a little bit of hype, but most of the stuff is going to be covering the top 3 decks, which are the Shaddolls, the Burning Abyss, and the Cleaves right now in the game. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now first off, I want to talk about MSC and Vanity's Emptiness. I feel like most players already main deck 3 copies of these, but if you don't already have 3 copies of this, you probably want the rest of them in your side deck because these cards are very key right now in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Next up, we have Stygian Dirge for a real side deck card, like I mentioned before. I feel like these are pretty much main deck oriented, but of course, you can definitely side deck them if you don't already have 3 copies of. Highly recommend you to do that. Next up, Stygian Dirge. This card is great against any synchro-based deck for the most part. In some odd circumstances, this can help your opponent, but for the most part, it will be a card that will hinder only your opponent. Because there are other cards that make it so neither player can synchro summon XYZ summon. This just affects your opponent. I really like it just for that. Next up, Shadow Imprisoning Mirror against Shaddolls, against Burning Abyss, anything dark related. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror has always been a really strong card against them. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Next up, Flying Sea, anything that is XYZ heavy oriented, something like Burning Abyss, something like the Satellar Knights. Sometimes Satellar Knights, and even Burning Abyss, they always side deck into the Vanity, so keep that in mind that these could always come out if you have to have Flying Sea. So that's kind of like the double-edged sword with Flying Sea. They can always tribute it, they won't be able to XYZ summon, and that can definitely still hurt them, especially Burning Abyss since they control a monster that is not a Burning Abyss. This definitely can put them far behind, but like I mentioned before, watch out these for the side deck. Next up, we have Spell Shattering Arrow. This card is awesome, especially against Cleaves when the game has gone on quite a bit, because you're able to disrupt the entire pendulum scale before it happens, or you can go ahead and make it so you can game them with this card, because they do have to pay 800 life points each time, and then maybe they activated something like a Solemn Warning, maybe you got a direct attack in multiple times or something like that. Spell Shattering Arrow can definitely make a game because you're going to destroy all face-up spell cards your opponent controls, and of course inflict 500, pretty much when the completer scales 1000 damage, and of course they're paying at least 1800, more than likely at least twice before they even really get a decent field in that deck, so that's a really awesome card against them. Another thing, Fairy Wind is also very good. Now this one over here, Spell Shattering Arrow, it is quick play, and it is technically something faster, but this only destroys face-up spell cards. Now Fairy Wind, on the other hand, destroys all face-up spell and trap cards. Now that can also cover things like Vanity's Emptiness, that can cover things like Skill Drain. This is a really great side deck card, especially if you're playing a deck that can OTK and you're hindered by something like a Vanity's Emptiness or something like this. And also, both players take damage, so sometimes that can actually kill you yourself if you activate it at the wrong time, but for the most part, you'll be overextending after you activate this card. If maybe your opponent has a completed pendulum skill, a Skill Drain, Vanity's Emptiness, and they maybe have that equip spell, you can inflict a bunch of damage to your opponent with Fairy Wind. Next up, the Monarch Stone Fourth. This is also used in conjunction with Vanity's Fiend and Majesty's Fiend. Both of these cards have been getting very, very popular because, I mean, if you're able to activate the Monarch Stone Fourth and get rid of a card that you normally couldn't get rid of, and then you drop one of these and your opponent just doesn't have an answer to it immediately, sometimes you can just win the game really quick, especially in decks that can kind of push really hard, because they're just going to have all that back row to protect that one monster. So maybe if you happen to have a bunch of monsters that you can summon, and then you can go for a Vanity's Fiend, maybe that can seal the deal in the game. But this is more oriented towards a control card, but sometimes you can, of course, have that game-winning factor. If you just summon Vanity's Fiend, your opponent can't summon anything in the game. Same thing with Majesty's Fiend, of course, depending on the deck. Next up, Enemy Controller. This card is very fantastic because, being able to OTK your opponent, maybe they happen to have a Clee with that equip card, so you can't OTK them, but, if you take their Clee monster, you can do anything you want with them, especially in any mirror match. Enemy Controller is just a fantastic card overall, and maybe your opponent's going to, snatch steal monster, you can be like, oh, I'm going to tribute it, I'm going to take your monster, and they're like, oh no, I missed out my target. So has double utility because not only can you, get rid of your own monster or take theirs, in other circumstances, you can always move things to defense position. Maybe if you don't happen to have a monster you tribute. It's got some utility and it's a fantastic card. Next up, Ojama Trio. This can disrupt a lot of different decks. Most likely it's probably Burning Abyss though. I kind of like Flying Sea personally better because it can't get MST'd, end phase, sometimes it happens and you're like, oh man, I wish if I could only activate this, but for the most part it basically can wreck some Burning Abyss because, they have all these Ojamas that they can't really make use of, but of course, Now these ones can't be tributed, just as a heads up, not like Flying C, so that's where Odroma Trio can be better in some circumstances. Like I mentioned before, these are very popular anyways in the side deck, so keep that in mind as well. Next up, Maxi, because Plant Synchro is kind of getting some hype because, you know, we got the Tengus, we got the Lone Fires, we have the Glow Bulb finally in the game. There's a lot of people that are playing Mermails also, so this is a fantastic card against Mermails. Even though Mermails can completely stop their push at any time, they usually can play relatively safe, but it still lets you be able to have that next turn, because if maybe you activate Maxi, your opponent doesn't want to go in that turn, they're going to wait next turn, maybe you'll draw that one card that you can actually just OTK them or establish a board where they can't do anything, or you can draw that extra Vandy's Emptiness, so it's kind of in a sense like an Upstart Goblin, if you will, against certain decks. Basically, it's not only an Upstart Goblin, but in a sense it can also be like a threatening roar in a sense, because you're like, you know what, I'm not going to let you OTK me this turn. If you want to, I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. Next up, I do want to mention Gorse also, because against certain decks like windups, I know windups aren't really too meta right now, but I want to just mention this because it is a good explanation of why Maxi is good in combination with Gorse. If you draw a bunch of cards, it's not going to matter if your opponent can just OTK you anyways. Out of the top 3 decks right now, Shaddoll's is basically the deck that OTKs out of like just random places. Cleese, you basically see it coming because, you know, they have a bunch of cards in their hand and they're going to complete their scale and they're going to just dump everything, because especially if they've already, you know, they lost all their monsters, maybe you torrential or something like that, and they just lost all their monsters, or you attacked over everything, you're going to see it coming. But Shaddol sometimes just out of nowhere, they'll just get a lot of free advantage and they'll drop the BLS on you and stuff like that. In combination with Maxi, I do like Gorse, so keep in mind, if you're going to be playing Maxi, sometimes you do need something like a Tragodia, something like a Gorse to keep yourself alive, especially if you're playing anti-meta or against anti-meta. Gorse is a fantastic card anyways, but it's just basically the example I want to give off is, even if you Maxi windups, they're just going to be like, I don't care, I'm going to OTK you. That was a very popular thing when windups were a thing. This is not counting when the windup loop was a thing. Obviously, Maxi, they can't really loop you and really get any free advantage off of that, because they're just going to give you more cards. But the main reason is you gotta have a way where you can rebuttal, or maybe if you happen to have like a Wind Blast face down, you don't have any cards to draw or something like that. That's where Maxi can come in clutch as well. But for the most part, I just want to give you guys that idea that just because you draw a bunch of cards, sometimes your opponent won't care. They'll just OTK you anyways. And a lot of decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can OTK now. Next up, Puppet Plant and Electric Virus. I feel like both these are very good, especially against the meta of the game. Puppet Plant allows you to steal a Warrior, which can be Dante or Spellcaster. A lot of the Shaddolls are spellcasters, so yeah, the Warriors or the spellcasters, you discard it and then you get to take control of it. Very good in a lot of mirror matches. Same thing with Electric Virus, you get to take a Machine or a Dragon type. More so just the Machines, it's all Cleese. I just really hate when Cleese equip that card, because there's like nothing that you can do to get over it, and sometimes it can be, you know, your way of just losing, because you can't get over that thing and you don't want to overextend, because they can at any point just go drop a bunch of monsters and really not get too punished for it, unless of course you have that bottomless trap hole. But for the most part, guys, these are a bunch of cards that I think are really good against the meta. And if you guys felt like I missed out on a lot of other cards, hey, I would love to know in the comment section below, and hear your thoughts on reasons why or what specific decks lose to these certain cards. But for the most part, guys, if you guys don't already have 3 of these in your main deck, highly recommend these first over any of the cards I mentioned. Of course, unless it's against a deck that, you know, like it's like Boojins that doesn't special summon as often, and they can still function without special summons. So, you know, depending on your matchup, of course, use your own good judgment, and you can decide for yourself what cards you like the best. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and good luck side decking. Azneyes signing out.